Hello, it is late July 2023 and I'm in the Wind River Range for what's planned to be a 6-day backpacking trip. As I head into the Bridger Wilderness, my plan is to make it to the Titcomb Basin and then hopefully head off trail for a couple days. The two biggest challenges that I expect to face are the off-trail travel and the weather. From about 3 to 4 days from now, it starts to get like 80% chance of thunderstorms every day, but I'm hopeful for the best. I've got a nice day to start out today along the Pole Creek Trail, and it's time to hit the trail. Officially entering the Bridger Wilderness of Bridger Teton National Forest. The Pole Creek Trail has been pretty consistent up to this point, but it just broke open into some big views. Nice little pond. I've probably already seen 100 people today. Pole Creek Trail is a popular route. I'm sure I'll continue to see people at least up through Titcomb, and hopefully I can break off trail and find my own wilderness. I recently broke off the Pole Creek Trail onto the Seneca Lake Trail, looking out at Barbara Lake. A lot of the entry points into the winds require several thousand feet of elevation gain before you start to get views like this. Coming in from Elkhart, you get dumped out after just a few miles. Hobbs Lake. I'll go ahead and warn you now, if you don't like beautiful mountain lakes, this will not be the video for you. Small Sapphire Lake. There are so many beautiful lakes out here that a little fella like this doesn't even show up on the map or get a name. Lane Lake. Who said that? It's a bit of a switchbacky climb to get to Seneca Lake, but the view does not disappoint. I'm hoping to find camp within the next little bit. I don't have a set destination in mind, gonna see what I can find along the way here. I popped off trail to look for a campsite, found this huge marmot right there underneath the rock. I guess he thinks he's hiding. We'll let him have his moment. Home sweet home. Found a nice, very secluded spot looking down on Seneca. Little rain started. Time to get set up. On this trip, I'm using the Wind River Range North map by Beartooth Publishing, supplemented with the free U.S. Forest Service Visitor Map app, and my route is heavily inspired by Nancy Pallister's guidebook, Beyond Trails in the Wind River Mountains. Let's take a look at the map for day one. Starting at Elkhart Park, I hiked along the Pole Creek Trail, past Photographer's Point, to the Seneca Lake Trail, which took me to camp north of Seneca Lake. Day one was about 9 miles. Day one in the Bridger Teton National Forest has been a great start to the trip. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that I saw 100 people today, and I can see why, because the views start very soon after Elkhart Park and they continue on. I had a good strong day of hiking and put myself in a position to break into the Titcomb Basin early on tomorrow, which should give ample time for exploring. Camp set up, I've got dinner in me, and I'm settling in for what I hope to be a relaxing evening, as long as these little rain scares stay away. That'll be the end of day one. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 2 of my adventure in the Bridger Wilderness. Restful night last night, a warm wind. The temperature stayed in the 50s for most of the night. I'm going to enjoy this beautiful morning, get packed up, and then head on to Titcomb Basin, one of the most famous destinations in the Wind River Range. My plan will be to hike into the basin, find a spot to set up, and then do some day hike exploring into the upper reaches. I'm going to finish up breakfast, get camp packed up, and be time to hit the trail. Here's a look at camp. I want to do a better job of showing camp both as I find it and as it looks set up. Little Seneca Lake. The day is starting off mostly cloudy. We will see how that develops. Finished up a short stretch of the Highline Trail, which runs concurrently with the CDT. Now I'm hopping on the Indian Basin Trail, closing in on Island Lake. There's been a couple llama groups out here. Interesting to see. First look at Island Lake. Seems about half the people that I passed have camped here. Pothole Lake. I am on the cusp of breaking into the Titcomb Basin. There she blows. The start of Titcomb Basin. There are a bunch of small ponds along Titcomb Creek leading into the basin. I'm going to hike up to the two big lakes and look for camper on one of them. The start of the lower Titcomb Lake. I think I'm going to try to aim pretty much right in between lower and upper. We'll see how it looks. Looking down the length of lower Titcomb Lake. It's turned into a mostly sunny day today. The wind actually feels pretty nice right now. Upper Titcomb Lake. I'm gonna hunt around, look for a spot to get set up, and then time to do some exploring this afternoon. Home sweet home. Someone did a fair amount of work to stack these rocks around the tent pad. Pretty nice, I guess. Let's just take a little 360-degree look. Enjoy the scenery from this camping spot in the magnificent Titcomb Basin. As mentioned, I'm going to get set up and then do some exploring to see what else I can see out here. There's a whole family of marmots living right beside me. There's 3 of them that I see chewing on some grass. The upper end of Upper Titcomb Lake, there are multiple roaring cascades on the far side of the lake where that snow melt is coming in and feeding this big old body of water. Twins Glacier underneath Twin Peaks. The Sphinx. Dinwoody Peak. Mount Helen. Mount Sacagawea, and the Titcomb Lakes. Some delicious strawberry snow. My second favorite flavor, right after lemon. Looking down on the Titcomb Lakes. Now, supposedly, in this bench is a pretty sizable body of water called Mistake Lake. I'm gonna see if I can check that out before returning to camp. I think this big boulder dam must be my last obstacle before Mistake Lake. Mistake Lake to the left, Upper and Lower Titcomb to the right, and here I am, stuck in the middle, with you. Made it back to home sweet home. A few sprinkles of rain came down while I was exploring up into Titcomb. Nothing bad at all though. What a wonderful playground this is. I can see why it's one of the most popular destinations in the Wind River Range backcountry. Let's take a look at the map for day 2. Starting at camp north of Seneca Lake, I got onto the Indian Basin Trail past Island Lake, then connected with the Titcomb Basin Trail, which heads to the other side of the map. Picking back up the Titcomb Basin Trail, I set up camp in between the lakes and then explored up into the basin before coming back along to check out Mistake Lake before returning to camp. Day 2 was about 11 miles. Day 2 in the Bridger Wilderness has been an incredible day of hiking. Started out with some pretty lake hopping, and then once I got into Titcomb Basin, I had high expectations and they were surpassed. It is an awesome area, surrounded by craggy mountain peaks and beautiful lakes. There is some threatening storm clouds building in the sky, but I've got camp set up, dinner's in me, and hopefully I can settle in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 2. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 3, my backpacking adventure in Wyoming's Wind River Range. Restful night last night. It rained lightly throughout most of the night, but didn't cause any problems, and it's cleared up here in the morning. Today's an exciting day for me because I'll be breaking off trail. I always say it's not a trip into the winds until I get to do some off-trail exploration, and that will begin after just a couple miles of on-trail travel today. I'm going to retrace my steps out of the Titcomb Basin, follow the trail up to the Indian Basin, and then break off to start exploring into the Indian Basin and the southern Indian Basin. I'm gonna finish up breakfast, get camp packed up, and then it'll be time to hit the trail and the off trail. Big fella on that rock has been spying on me as I pack up this morning. Bye bye, Titcomb Basin. A magical place. Thanks for the hospitality. Finished retracing my steps along the Titcomb Basin Trail. Now I'm hopping on the Indian Basin Trail. This sign says Indian Pass Trail. Most maps say Indian Basin. I'll follow this for a little bit and then it'll be time to break off trail. A bit of a climb to start off this stretch of the Indian Basin Trail, but very pretty scenery to enjoy. Starting off as a mostly sunny day. As we've seen, that can change pretty quickly. It looks good right now though. I'm up amongst the snow. The first of the Indian Basin lakes that I've come to. Not a bad start to the basin. Second of the Indian Basin lakes. Here we go. Striding off the trail. Going exploring. Third of the Indian Basin lakes. I'd like to stay up as much as I can to work my way to this little pass and then come over and circle around the other side. Fremont Peak, Jackson Peak, Knife Point. Just did a big loop around the Indian Basin. That's looking down on the second Indian Basin lake that we saw earlier. I'm going to continue off trail, try to make it into the South Indian Basin. I just finished up a lunch in the shade of this big rock. Now I'm going to continue to loop my way around the second Indian Basin lake. And as I've said, hope to pop into the South Indian Basin. I'm not sure if I'll make it as far today as I had originally planned. I got a little bit of a late start, but I always try to give myself some flexibility with these off-trail days because I just never know how hard the terrain's gonna be, how slow it's gonna be, when a storm's gonna pop up. So it'll work out throughout the trip. Got some beautiful hiking ahead. Adios, Indian Basin. I'm heading towards your southern brethren. I'll head down, 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 and then up, 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 up. Lake 10794. Right after this, I should be dropping into the South Indian Basin, making my way on a beautiful day. Looking down into the start of the South Indian Basin and looking up into what comes as no surprise, a big bank of storm clouds. Home sweet home. I made the executive decision to pull up about 2 miles short. I'm going to camp here in South Indian Basin. Reason being, my next obstacle is a pass, and I've got big storms developing on both sides. Just a week ago in the Fitzpatrick Wilderness, I got caught in a storm on a plateau. That's not a risk I'm willing to take again. A quick look at camp setup before the rain starts. I'm feeling so good about my decision to not risk the pass. What I thought was a medium storm out to the west and a small storm out to the east has Mighty Morphin Power Rangered itself into one monstrosity. Let's take a look at the map for day 3. Starting just off the top of the map in the Titcomb Basin, I took the Titcomb Basin Trail down to the Indian Basin Trail and then cut up to just off the map again where I broke off trail, came down through looping around Indian Basin to South Indian Basin, and I set up camp a little bit above the South Pond. Day 3 was about 9 miles. Day 3 has been a good solid day. Fun hiking, getting to break off trail and explore 3 basins: Titcomb, Indian, and South Indian. The storms come out pretty much every day, and so I have to keep planning ahead to make sure that I can get to a spot before they hit. I've got a beautiful site, camp set up, dinner's in me, and I'm going to settle in for a relaxing evening. As long as nothing crazy happens, that'll be the end of day 3. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 4 of my backpacking adventure in the Bridger-Teton National Forest. It rained virtually non-stop all night last night and appears to be wanting to continue in that vein this morning. It's still early, so I'm hoping that these clouds may burn themselves off once the sun has something to say about it. If not, if the rain sticks around, I may make some alterations to my plans. I never like, having all this rain, but it certainly lends to some incredible scenery. Hello again. It's time for day 4 to start in earnest. Obviously there are still a lot of imposing gray clouds in the sky, but it hasn't rained for about an hour and they're not producing any thunder or lightning, so I'm going to give it a go. The reason why I was hesitating is today contains the crux of my trip, in which I will be scrambling across moderately steep rock slabs about 80 feet above the surface of a lake, so I did not want to do that in a rainstorm. Hopefully it'll hold off. It's time to hit the off trail. I'm heading dead ahead up Island Wall Pass, and I just spotted 2 people up there. First people I've seen in about 24 hours. They may be going the same way I'm going. They just turned to look back at me. I'm gonna try to catch them. Down in the front there is my buddy Tim Gardner. First time I've ever met a subscriber to Lane's World outside of my home state of North Carolina. I appreciate the love, Tim. Y'all be safe, boys. Top of the pass. Heading down with Ed and Gab. Dropping down from Island Wall Pass is Lake 10488 to the left, the beginnings of Wall Lake to the right. There's a little bit of the pass that I came down. Took a while to find a place to cross the outlet of 10488, but I'm now on the correct side of Wall Lake. Really cool lake to look at, interesting shape to it. This area through here looks like the crux. Good news, finished up the crux, safe and sound. The bad news, the rain has come back in and I'm still a while from where I expect to find camp. We'll see what happens. A pretty meadow valley here as I head down towards Cook Lakes and hopefully camp And I think I've spotted the use trail that should take me there, right through the trees up that hill. Made it down to Upper Cook Lake. The rain has pitter-pattered off for the moment, but I still hope to find camp somewhere in the vicinity very shortly. Home sweet home. Found a nice sheltered spot a couple 100 yards away from Upper Cook Lake. I'm gonna go ahead and get set up before any more rain starts for the day. Would you look at what just popped out over Upper Cook Lake? Some blue sky. And the sun's trying to poke through as well. Let's take a look at the map for day 4. Starting at my campsite in South Indian Basin, I came over and down Indian Wall Pass between 10488 and Wall Lake, past the Crux, to connect with the use trail down to Upper Cook Lake, where I got camp set up for the night. Day 4 was about 6 miles. Day 4 of my adventure has been an awesome day. I had some fun off-trail hiking and got to see beautiful sights. As much as I love getting out into the wilderness off-trail away from everyone, the highlight of my day was definitely the people that I saw along the way. First was Ed and Gab, who I met near the top of the pass, and we talked and walked together for probably about an hour. And then as soon as we met, we both said, hey, we didn't expect to see anyone out here. And then only a minute or two later, Tim and his hiking buddy came up the other side of the pass, and we were all 5 there, 3 disparate groups, but it seemed like we were just 5 old friends who got to come together, talk about the trails we had seen, what was coming up, what the weather was looking like the next couple days. So it was really fun to run into some like-minded souls who are out in the Wind River Range doing off-trail hiking on a cold, rainy, windy day. Camp set up, and I'm getting settled in for a relaxing evening. That'll be the end of day 4. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 5, the penultimate day of my backpacking adventure in the Wind River Range. Last night started out with some pretty solid heavy rain, but it petered out midway through the night. Actually, at one point I woke up in the middle of the night and it was so bright I thought maybe it was already dawn, but it felt too early, so I got out, looked, used the bathroom, and the moon, nearly full or full moon, was just illuminating the night sky and the ground. It's still a little cloudy and intimidating looking this morning, but there are some patches of blue sky. How far I go today depends on how cooperative the rain is. The farther I can go, the shorter day I'll have for my final day tomorrow, so I'm hoping to make some good progress. I'm going to get a wet tent packed up, and then it'll be time to hit the trail. Bye-bye, Upper Cook Lake. Thanks for the hospitality. I'm going to visit your lower brother, Lower Cook Lake. I don't know what to believe is going to happen. There's a couple pretty blue patches and a couple scary gray patches. Some recent ungulate footprints and scat right in front of Lower Cook Lake. I've got a very short stretch coming up on the Fremont Trail, which runs concurrently with the CDT. The trail system is a little confusing through here. According to the map, I was on Cook Lake Loop to start out, then Fremont, then back on Cook Lake Loop, and now I'm getting onto the Highline Trail. Alrighty, well, I've got a wet foot crossing to tackle here on Pole Creek in between some of the Pole Creek lakes. Made it across, no problem. Finishing up the Highline Trail. Now I'll be on Pole Creek Trail. A long, unnamed pond right along the Pole Creek Trail. It has started to sprinkle, and there's been some thunder kicking off in the distance. Mary Mary's Lake, a member of the Two Top Lakes. Eckland Lake, I last saw her 5 days ago from a different angle. I've hopped onto the Sweeney Lakes Trail, hoping to make it to Miller Lake for the night, looking down on Upper Sweeney. A close-up of Upper Sweeney. The sky looks about as good as it has all day. Glimmering through the trees is Middle Sweeney Lake. That blue patch in the sky went away quickly. First look at Miller Lake. The trail pretty much runs parallel along the lake, and I'm going to follow it all the way to the far end, where I hope to find camp based off information I got from a couple other backpackers. Home sweet home. Made it to camp along Miller Lake. Comes with a nice view looking out. Hopefully I'll get to enjoy it without too many storms coming in. Ooh, a blue patch. I love that. I look around camp, set up, and I'm getting blessed with a little bit of sun rays poking through to dry some of my gear. Let's take a look at the map for day 5. Starting at my campsite on Upper Cook Lake, I followed the Cook Lake Loop Trail through the kind of confusing area where this, I believe, is the Fremont Trail, and then the Highline Trail to connect with the Pole Creek Trail, which brought me to this intersection. And you have to be careful going on the Sweeney Lakes Trail because the first 20 or 30 feet is not visible. The trail peters out, but just head directly south in that intersection on the Sweeney Lakes Trail, and then on the Miller Lake Trail to where I'm set up camp for the night. Day 5 was about 10 miles. Day 5 in the Bridger Wilderness has been another great day. Pretty lakes, and the rain held off until I made it to camp, at which point it came down in sheets. Even with the great hiking today, it was once again a day where the people I met along the way were the highlights. A pair of fellows named Justin and Pedro. Leapfrogged with them probably a half dozen times. They passed me 3 or 4, I passed them 3 or 4. We ended up just hiking together for a little bit. Cool guys from Colorado. And then after I set up camp, I met my buddy Jim from California. And Jim drove 15 hours yesterday to get up here to the winds just to sit in the biggest downpour that I've been in on this trip. And when I met him afterwards, he had a huge smile on his face, and he was looking forward to taking on the 9-day adventure that he has coming up. So good luck to you, Jim. I've got camp set up, dinner's in me, and I'm settling in for what I hope to be a relaxing evening with only a little bit more rain. That'll be the end of day 5. Good night. Good morning. Made it to day 6. The final day of my back-to-back trips in the Wind River Range. Rained throughout the night and into the morning. I've got a brief lull here where I packed up a soaking wet tent. The temperature at night has been remarkably consistent. Each night has been between 45 and 49 degrees. The days have been the exact opposite, very inconsistent. Some days barely breaking above 50, some days almost breaching 80. It's made for quite an array of conditions to get to see the winds in, and I'm looking forward to hopefully not having too much rain on my last walk out here. I've spent so much time in the backcountry of the winds recently that it didn't even hit me until middle of the evening last night that it was my last night here. 12 of the last 13 days I've been in the winds backcountry, and the one other day I was driving around the range from Du Bois to South Pass to Pinedale. It is a magical place. In my opinion, I'm not sure that there's a more pure backpacker's playground out there than the Wind River Range. I've got a couple miles to finish off my trip, and it's time to hit the trail. Let's take a look at the map for day 6. Starting at my campsite on Miller Lake, I'm going to connect with the Pole Creek Trail, retracing my steps from the beginning of the trip back to the Elkhart Trailhead. Day 6 is about 3.5 miles for a trip total of a little below 50 miles. Au revoir, Miller Lake. I appreciate the hospitality. Finishing up my stretch of the Miller Lake Trail, I'm now rejoining with the Pole Creek Trail, which will be a little over 3 miles of the same way I came in. Much different weather than the first day. It was hot and sunny. Today it is not hot and sunny. I'm gonna go ahead and sign out here on the trail. I know the parking lot is going to be a zoo. Elkhart is maybe the biggest trailhead I've ever seen. It's crazy. I didn't do too much filming on the way out today, but it's the same mileage I did on day 1. So you can rewatch the beginning of the video and just imagine the trail as about 30% standing water, 60% mud, 10% horse poop, and that's how it is. Oh man, what a trip. Great trip. I had a really fun time. You know, it's cliche, but Titcomb Basin is an absolutely magisterial location. I'm already thinking about how I can get back out there and do some more exploring. Some fun off-trail hiking, nothing too difficult. You know, the weather was definitely a big factor on this trip. But other than that, no real issues. One of the coolest things that happened was getting to meet my guy Tim G from New York. The first time I've ever met a subscriber outside my home state of North Carolina. So big shout out to you, Tim. Hardcore fella. He was coming up the hard side of Indian Wall Pass in the middle of a storm. I was like, yeah, this guy, he's a serious guy. But it got me wondering where everyone else is from. So anyone who's made it all the way through this video, thank you. And let me know what state you're from in the comments. And if you have a backpacking destination that you recommend in your state, share that with me as well. Maybe one day I'll make it out there. For now, I'm making it back up to Yellowstone. And until next time, thanks for tuning into Lane's World. Goodbye.